Hi. Um, we're live with live. This is our live stream, and we're listening and discussing my compositions for electronics, live oscilloscope, but also engaging in a dialogue, taking your questions. We're using this as a springboard for the larger discussion of what it means to be present with our listening, to be present with sound as a listener, and how I try to work with that as a composer. I'm a listener, I'm also a composer, and I'm trying to be completely present with sound in a way which is not distracted, which is not spacing out, which is not using it as a backdrop for daydreaming or, you know, fantasy, but just being here wherever that is. Like right now, I'm sitting in a chair. I've got headphones on. I'm in my room, but I could be anywhere, and just to be completely focused on one thing. So wherever you are, driving or in transit or at work or so this is not meant for multitasking. This is a break from that. We're taking we're giving ourselves permission to have a little break for ourselves, to be alone and to be focused on sound and to be present with that and to allow that to break down kind of mistaken ideas that we might have about listening and to try to coordinate inside and outside, instead of just thinking that the sound is coming from outside us. We're trying to match that with what's going on inside of us, which is our sense perceptions, our pulse, our heart rate, biorhythms, and especially our brain waves. And these pieces are structured to correspond to and to reinforce positive brainwave patterns by using binaural processing. So headphones, right, left, there's one audio input in the right and there's another audio input in the left, and they come together, they meet, and it creates a rhythm, actually, which can be really great, which can really emphasize and grow positive patterns. And this is a scientific fact. This is not something that's been made up, and this is not something that I'm distorting to sell my brand, but this is well established, has been proven, and it's not dangerous. It's not like a form of uh, hypnotism or anything like that, but it's being more completely aware and present in the present moment and being in reality, you know, with sound. And we have all of our sense perceptions. We have seeing, sight, smell, taste, touch. I mean, we can be present with all of them. And this is using two of them. This is using primarily sound, hearing, and secondarily, it's using the visual, which is the video. And so you may ask, well, why is one primary and one secondary? And actually, we've worked very hard to make them the same thing. But I'm trained as a musician, so my personal orientation is towards sound. Out of the five senses, that's the one that I'm able to focus the most on. If I were for example, a great chef, then I would have more skill and more ability to focus on taste, beyond just sort of the basic level that I have. And, or like a great sommelier, like a great wine taster, is someone who has a very extremely developed sense of taste, right? And who works with that through skill. And you could say the same thing for smell, like a parfumier, someone who creates fragrance, or something like that, is an artisan of smell, of fragrance. A You might say that a couturier, like a great designer, is both visual and tactile, is working both with the visual sense and also with the feeling of clothing, fabric, how it is on you, right? Um, Sight, smell, taste, touch. But in this case, I'm working with the other three. Those are the three that I'm not working with. I'm not working with taste, smell, or touch in this. Um, but I am working with sound and image. And obviously, there's some borderline between the two. I mean, sound is a vibration, and we do feel it in our bodies through bone conductivity. So sound is not just vibrations in the ear and turning into electrical impulses in the brain. It's also a full body experience that we can experience through bone conductivity, especially through bigger loudspeakers, not just headphones. And make sure your headphones are not too loud. We really want to keep the decibel level fairly low. You want to be able to hear everything, but we never want to approach any sort of damaging threshold. So, for any kind of music that I make, I really consider like an upper limit to be 80 decibels. I really think anything more than 80 decibels is not healthy. We get excited by it, like a loud rock concert or like a big crashing cymbals in a symphony concert, but I don't think in the long term that's really helpful for us. I think that it can be damaging, and it can take us out of the present moment. Um, what I'm trying for this music is a more continuous stream of sound that maybe doesn't have those big cymbal crashing loud moments, but which has a way of tuning in to yourself and with others who are sharing it, who share that interest over a span of time. Now, these TikTok videos are just very short. They're just, very brief. They are excerpts of longer works that I have posted on my YouTube channel. So follow the links to the YouTube channel, and you can hear the larger pieces that they're taken from, which range from about 16 minutes to about 22 minutes. But they all follow the same basic format of three sections. You might call them three movements. The first section is an exposition. It starts from like zero. It starts with like almost imperceptible sound and builds up. And then in the second section, it looks at the same material but going in a from opposite direction. So you can think of it as a kind of uh, an exposition. First section, first movement. Second movement is a kind of a development of the first, but in reverse order. So the musical word for that is a retrograde. And then all of the material comes back in a very brief ending, which is really just like one uh, final or climactic chord where you can hear all of the elements together, and then they drop out one by one. And I restricted myself to just 10 sounds like 10 instruments. There are 10, in this case, there are 10 electronic sounds, but you can think of them if you just imagine like a group of 10 instruments arranged from low, lowest to highest, like from like bass or like tuba or bassoon, going up to the middle, through the middle ones, up to the highest ones, like the flute, the piccolo, something like that, right? And so each instrument has its own pitch and has its own rhythm. I capped it at 10 because I just thought that I just wanted to make it something that we could not get too complicated. We could just focus on that. So when you're listening to these pieces, you're just listening to the interacting melodies and harmonies and rhythms that come out of these 10 layers of sound, or like sort of these 10 electronic instruments, which are also arranged binaurally in the right and left to synchronize with specific frequencies in our brain waves, alpha, beta, theta, right? And to keep us in a calm, relaxed, alert state, which is positive, not paranoid, not hyper, not depressed. And why do I do that? I do that because I have problems. I've dealt with emotional and psychological issues my whole life, and I music has been a way for me to self-medicate, which has not been physically dangerous, and so it's been a way forward for me. But I want to create music that will keep me in reality, that's not going to take me out of reality, that I'm not going to just space out to or waste my life to, because, you know, I've wasted enough time in my life, and we all have, and we only have so much time. So this is about, for me, and I hope for you, making the most of the limited time that we have and using our sense of sound, our hearing, and our visual sense to open up a window. And if it speaks to you, then if it hits you, then music, when I feel it, when it speaks to me, it opens up a space inside of me. And then I can enter into that. And that space, in that space, there's everything, really. There's a whole world in there, even if it's just a few sounds. So it's just this very limited set of materials that, each a piece of music is limited. We have basic physical limitations to what we can hear and what we can perceive. We have perceptual limits, basically, you know, they say 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, but it's, this pitch quality really starts disappearing, above 10,000 hertz. And 20 hertz is very, very hard to hear. But, in that general range, right, is what we can hear. Bone conductivity may go below that or above that, depending upon the person. And we also have limitations, obviously, in terms of physical limitations of how long we can just sit and listen to something, but hopefully we can expand those, after a certain point, it breaks off because our bodies demand that we eat or sleep or, take care of other bodily functions. So, and of course, there are physical limitations to how long musicians can produce sounds. You can't ask symphony musicians to hold a note for hours endlessly. And so working within these finite limitations the amazing thing is that it can open up a much bigger sense. If a musical performance of a musical piece, if it's well structured and if it's well performed, it's magical. It opens up, it's a finite structure and it's a finite perceptual experience, which opens up an unbounded, or really like an infinite experience. And this is what I'm exploring. And so the rhythms and the pitches that I choose are, and the phrase structures and the harmonies and melodies are all designed to maximally interact with the largest possible universe of information. So I think that I experience sound as a microcosm of the macrocosm, that we have a limited sense perception which allows us to perceive rhythms and harmonies and consonance and dissonance, and the information in that, in sound, is a window into the way information works in the whole universe. And it's true. I mean, the same harmonic and rhythmic relationships that we hear in music, they are absolutely in the orbital patterns of planets, of stars, of galaxies, on the highest level, and on the smallest level, the same rhythms and ratios exist on the tiniest levels of atoms and subatomic quantum phenomena. And again, this is not a fantasy or science fiction, but this is science. This is actually what we know. Yeah. So this is not scientific music or mathematical music. It's emotional because it comes from my emotion, and I'm hoping that it connects to an emotion that you have. It may be different from the emotions that we normally want from music. We're in our culture, we are trained to just use music as a kind of a soundtrack for memories, like sad memories or happy memories or something like that. But I'm not interested in memory. I'm interested in what's going on right now. Yeah. So I'm not interested in creating a soundtrack for reliving the past, either positively or negatively. In other words, I'm not trying to create a soundtrack for nostalgia or regret in terms of the past. And I'm not trying to create a soundtrack for the future, either positively or negatively. I'm trying to get away from positive ideas about the future, like hope, or negative ideas about the future of fear. So it's the emotional world that I'm trying to connect to is in the present. My positive and negative feelings in the present. But without those positive and negative feelings about the past and future, without nostalgia, without regret, without hope, and without fear. This is the emotional space, the psychological space, and the spiritual space that I'm trying to develop with as much technique as I can as a composer, and that I'm trying to share with you as listeners. And now, I don't work exclusively in electronics. These are purely electronic compositions, and these are just basically kind of studies or etudes for me. I enjoy them. But I also write acoustic instruments, acoustic music for acoustic instruments. And for me, the same sorts of rhythms and melodies and harmonies work just as well in an acoustic space with violins, pianos, regular instruments, guitar, whatever, singing, voices. The only difference is that in an acoustic space like a concert hall, the sounds all mix together, so you can't get the binaural effect. You can't get the deeper brainwave effect that's achievable with headphones. You know, so that is a difference. The and in order to maximize that binaural effect we can get with headphones, I work with a very minimal, simple sound source, which is a sine wave. And in order to, which is the simplest type of sound without any overtones. So, it sounds very, it has that old school electronic sound that you hear in these videos. And in order to make it maximally effective, I use a beginning, middle, and end of the sound that's called a sinusoid, where it starts from 0 and it goes to a maximum and then down to a 0, and we make sure that the maximum does not distort. That way, there's no loss of information when we hear it, and we can just relate to it intuitively. If there's any sort of distortion or any sort of percussive attack, then it's more difficult. Our brains have got to work harder to identify the pitch and the rhythm. So what I'm trying in these pieces is to try to keep the pitches and the rhythms as clear and as transparent as possible. So I do that by eliminating noise elements, such as noisy attacks or distorted maxima and so on. So each sound is just sort of a very, very simple, minimal sound without overtones or other sounds that sort of, emerges from from silence and then grows and then at the same rate disappears back into silence. And so hearing the silence and hearing the sounds emerging out of the silence is a part of the listening experience. And so when you listen to these sorts of pieces, you're not just listening to the sound, but you're listening to what's around the sound, which is the silence. And so for me, this relates to sitting meditation practice, which I'm sure, you all have in some way or another, whether that is in a religious context like a silent prayer or exercise like yoga, or whether you do a more formal sitting meditation practice like Zen or a satsang or whatever in any tradition like that, or a completely secular form. What's really helpful is to sit in a quiet place without distraction, to check into your body with posture. So I suggest that you just sort of like try to sit up and take a moment and check your spinal alignment, and hopefully you're not dealing with physical pain. Just try to like maybe arch your back slightly, don't hyperflex it, make sure that your hips are sort of aligned upright, and that there's a sort of a slight tension in your lower back to keep the spine as straight as possible. And try to just, sit naturally. Don't throw out your chest. Don't be, but just in a relaxed way, spread across. Allow your arms to fall comfortably wherever they are, whether it's on your armchair or at your sides. Relax the muscles in your face so that there's no tension. I realize I've got a lot of that, and I apologize. I can see that on my face on the screen, and as we get older, these things become more visible. So I'm like everyone else, and feel no tension in the neck. Imagine that there's sort of like a string attaching our head to the ceiling. Our head is just sort of like floating, and so that there's no tension around the ears or around the eyes or around the mouth. Just breathe normally in a relaxed way. Just allow the breath to go in and out. And we breathe with the sound. The idea is to try to coordinate the sound coming in and out with our breathing coming in and out. And then we allow in-breath and the out-breath and the sound. And then gradually, over time, we notice other levels of connection. We notice that it's also coordinated to our pulse, to our heart rate. And you might feel other little rises and falls, like within your body. You might notice, like things like subtle variations of body chemistry or blood sugar level. And you just continue with that, with the sound. And then you might notice actually subtle sounds that are happening inside, your ears or inside your eyes or inside your mind itself. And this is not hallucination. This is not imagination. This is actually checking in with yourself. So this is what we're trying to do. It is a poetic, emotional expression, but it is also a contemplative way of connecting to our senses. Yeah. And so you may have questions about the specific sounds that I use and about your reactions, some of which might be positive, some of which might be negative. Yeah. And that's fine. I don't want anyone to have a bad experience, but all sorts of stuff can come up. This is not about just positivity. It's whatever is in the present moment. And whatever it is that we're bringing to our experience of sound in the present moment is going to be present in the sound. And so the goal is not to get rid or to push down negativity, but just to go deeper into our sense perception in the present. So we're trusting that there's basically something good about being who we are, being human beings who have senses, who are able to hear and who are able to focus on what we hear and not just get distracted by street noise or whatever it is that's out there, and that we can trust that there is something beneficial and nurturing and wholesome about taking a little bit of time to focus on our experience of sound, and that there is something valuable. This is what musicians do. This is what composers do. And we just want to find the listeners who share that same orientation towards a contemplative experience of sound. And so you may have specific questions, so you can just, type them in on the chat about how this works, the sounds that I've chosen. Each piece has a different collection. I said the basic format of these pieces is the same, which was three movements, an exposition, a development, and a concluding coda. But each piece has a different, and each piece has 10. I chose as a sort of a formal parameter 10 sounds, but the 10 sounds that I chose for each are different. And you may have questions about, well, how did you choose these 10 sounds and how is each group different? And I'd be happy to go into sort of the nitty gritty of that with you. Um, Without getting too technical, I chose sounds that harmonize together on some level, that are all related to one basic sound, like if you're in playing music that's in a key, like in C major, that means that the notes that you're playing are all relating to like C, and if you're playing in D major, then they're all related to D. Well, instead of being in a major or a minor key, we say like all of these pitches and rhythms are related to one basic frequency, but I'm choosing different aspects of that, what we call overtones of that, and I'm choosing ones that have, to me, the most emotional or um, uh, psychological or spiritual value. Yeah, that speak the most to me. Yeah, and and every time I sit down to create a piece, there's going to be different depending on the mood that I'm in or the emotion that I'm feeling. That determines my sound choices of the basic sounds and the basic rhythms that are speaking truth to me. So when I'm listening to any music, if it's Beethoven or jazz or anything, I'm listening for an experience of truth, and I'm hoping that the composer and the songwriter, that the musicians, the performers are expressing that truth skillfully, that the composer and the musicians are expressing truth with skill. And I try to develop my own skills as much as possible to communicate a sense of truth. And if I succeed, then you experience some sort of truth. Some people will, some people won't. Everyone's going to have a different experience. But I hope that I can expand, my skills and my truth communicative ability through sonic attention. Yeah. And yeah. Are we still online? Are we still online? Okay. And would you like me to continue in this way? Uh-huh. And yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the instead of conventional scales like major and minor scales, these pieces are based upon pitches and rhythms that are derived from the overtone series. And normally in traditional music, only the lowest overtones are considered the most consonant. The octaves, the fifths, the thirds, which correspond to the lowest prime numbers. Those are generated out of the rhythms and the ratios of multiples of 2, 3, and 5. I know that's a little bit of theory, but as you know, 2, 3, and 5 are the first 3 prime numbers. And what we've been exploring in these pieces is going beyond that, starting with the 2, 3, and 5 multiples of frequencies, but then going beyond that. And what's beyond that? 7, 11, 13, going on like that. You know? So going further and further into the prime ratios of the overtone series and trying to see if we can stay focused with that. And it's a challenge. It's definitely outside of our comfort zone. Yeah. Because our whole lives we've only heard the harmonies and the rhythms that come out of just the first 3, 2, 3, and 5. And in fact, even the 5 is can be difficult. Mostly the rhythms of pop music and stuff are just like 2s and 3s, like 1, 2, 3, like 4 on the floor. That's multiples of 2, or like waltzes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Those are 3. But even 5s are a little bit out there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoa, right? Actually, Luca, I'd like to just take a pause for a moment, if that's okay with you. I'll come right back. I need to get a little bit of water. I'm having a little bit of allergy, so I'll be right back. Can we just pause this? Hello? Or maybe we tie it up. Hello? I don't know if there's anyone else sending messages, but yeah. So I either need to take a pause or I need to end the session. So whichever you prefer. Pause or end. Which do you prefer? Hello? Yeah, I need to take a break. So either pause or no, but should I pause or should we just end the session? This is what I'm asking. All right. All right. I'll be right back, and then we'll continue. All right. Okay, we returned from schedule to our scheduled programming. Hello? Hello? Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. Where did it where did that all right. And all right. I wonder where the icon is for that, but I'll just find it on Chrome. All right. Well, hold on. All right. There's my video. I turned the oh, okay. All right. Oh, all right. And Chrome Remote Desktop. Here it is. Okay. And yeah. All right. Yeah, sure. Okay, there it is. And let me send it to you. And okay. This is just you and me. This is not going out to everyone, right? All right. Okay. You should be receiving it. It begins with a 3. Did you receive it? Okay. Okay. And I should be getting a confirmation message there. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. And it should be coming back to you. All right. So are we reconnecting? Hello to Greg Sherwood. Hello. Hi there. Okay. Hello, welcome. Hello, welcome, Greg. Welcome, Mr. Sherwood. And okay, so. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Okay, we're reconnecting. So we're reconnecting the audio and the video so I can chat with you. Welcome, Greg Sherwood. Welcome, and welcome whoever else is checking in. And so that was just an example of the microcosm within the macrocosm, which is the microcosm is our physical limitations, the limitations of perception, and just our physical limitations, you know. So, yeah. Okay, the audio feed is about 10 seconds behind, so right, so it's coming in my headphones, so okay, great. So we're working the best we can in a good faith way within our own physical limitations, you know. So what I was saying before about sitting upright and posture and spinal alignment and shoulders and neck and head, and realize these are just suggested guidelines. We're working the best we can to try to maximize our perceptual awareness and our sonic attention within that, right? Because what we were talking about before, or that there are 5 different types. I think we might want to lower the audio in the background a little bit. Yeah, it's fine. We just need to like lower the level so it's not louder than the voice output. Yeah, great. And yeah, let's check. Welcome, Blake. Yeah. And so yeah, the finite limitations that we're dealing with include the maxima of sonic perception of perceivable pitch ranges from 20 to 20,000 hertz. The maximal, levels of what we can, that was in terms of frequencies. In terms of amplitudes, we're trying to keep our amplitudes in a comfortable level below 80 decibels, and we're trying to, as much as possible, eliminate distortion and noise from our perceptions. So we're trying to work with sounds that are undistorted and that that move in and out of silence. So from 0 to 80 dB, and then we want there to be a comfortable sort of interplay between sound and silence. If it's just continuous sound, we very quickly bracket that as a kind of as a background. So in order to stay focused on the foreground in terms of our awareness, there has to be an optimal balance between sound and silence. Yeah, just continuous sound is not, we're not evolved to stay focused on a continuous sound. It becomes background, and then that becomes stress. So we also want to minimize the sound, stress producing sound. Yeah. So there has to be an optimal balance of sound and silence. And that optimal balance is what we perceive of as rhythms, And then, in addition to all those limitations, we have just, other limitations that vary from person to person in terms of how long we can comfortably maintain posture, silence, breath, all of those things, right? The alignments within our bodies. Like, for example, today I'm experiencing a little bit of allergic congestion. And you might hear that in my voice, or you might see that in my face. And that is another limitation that I happen to be working with at this moment. So we're checking in with ourselves, with our own limitations, which are different from person to person and from moment to moment and from time to time. And within those limitations, I'm trying to make a good faith effort to remain focused on sound and image. And anyone who is checking into this live stream is also trying to do that. Why? Because from our own experience in our own lives, we know that making the effort to stay focused on sound and image is valuable, that we get something positive from this, and that each time we do that, our sonic or visual sense of perception and the coordination, our audio-visual nexus of the two of those, that it grows and that can get deeper, and we're able to synthesize our perceptions over longer arcs of time. And that the more we can do that, the more we can have a positive, wholesome sense of integration of our perceptions with our other faculties. That by coordinating and extending our sonic perception, we extend that to our other types of sensory perception: audio, visual, smell, taste, touch. And that by integrating our sensory perceptions through attention, that we're able to integrate that with our other types of attention. Our emotional attention, the emotions that we're feeling, right? And our functional attention, which is our bodily functions, our breathing, our biorhythms, our pulse, our heart rate, our brainwave frequencies. right? Which is mostly subconscious. And then on the conscious level, we have rational attention, which is our awareness of ratios, numerical relationships. We hear that in the rhythms, and we feel it intuitively, but also consciously. We can also count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this is part of the musical experience: the rational, the emotional, the functional, the libidinal, really. How we experience this on a sort of a semi-conscious level of sexuality, aggression, or just a sense of trance, of just sort of spacing out, or even moving into a kind of an unconscious state. These are all parts of the musical experience: the rational, the emotional, the libidinal, the sensory, and the all of that. It's all going at once. So the more we develop any one type of attention, the more it reinforces the other types of attention. So we can say that listening, undistracted, active listening in the present, and just working with our relationship to the present, positive or negative, without going into positive or negative or neutral relationships to the past. We said, without getting into nostalgia or regret, or positive or negative ideas about, those are memories or projections into the future, right? Ideas of future hope or future fear, but just staying simple and simply in the present with whatever's going on, which is our body, our sense perceptions, sound, and staying with that. This is a key to developing a wholesome and healthy continuity within ourselves, so that we can make the most of our limited time that we have here as human beings, in our lives, on our planet. I'm finite, you are finite, the world is finite, the universe is finite. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. By focusing on music that has sounds that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, we can relate to everything that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I hope this doesn't just sound like crazy philosophical gobbledygook, or, I hope this doesn't feel like nonsense or BS. I'm really trying to be truthful with myself, and I'm trying to communicate truthfulness, hopefully, to anyone who might be listening. And and so, if there are any questions or comments, please, all the comments are open. And there's nothing which is off the table, and even if you think it's complete, even if you are getting nothing specific out of it, I think anything that comes up is worth examining, because whatever is happening right now in the present moment with our perceptions, with sound, sense perceptions, is valuable. It's not It's not insignificant. It's not just entertainment. It's not just passing the time or wasting the time, but it's actually using time most effectively, really. Even if it's not making money, there's more. Yes, making money is important for all of us. I mean, we all have to survive, right? But there are other useful ways of our time. And cultivating a positive relationship, productive relationship to our sense perceptions is also valuable, even if it's not necessarily monetizable. I always, hi Chris, hi Chris, whenever I encounter anything which is valuable for me, whether it's teaching or music or art, I always make a free will, goodwill offering. If it's a musician on the subway or, a teacher, anything that helps me, I like to show my love and my appreciation by making a modest monetary offering. This to me makes me feel that I'm maintaining a wholesome relationship and good faith to it. I don't like um, taking anything for free, anything valuable. I want to express my love and my appreciation, and uh, there are many ways to do that. One way is to reach out to a person and to say, "Hey, thanks," And another way to do that is to is through money. Yeah. So I do that, and I think other people, should do that as well. Yeah. But this is not a money bag or any kind of bag. This is just me sharing my work with you in hopes that it is valuable and that you can relate to it in some way, which is helpful and wholesome and that can help you grow. I'm like everyone else. I'm an ordinary person. I struggle. Every day is a constant struggle for me to be a better person to myself and others. And I feel that I'm struggling in the dark towards the light. And this is what I try to honestly express artistically through sound, through music, through composition, through performance. And I know others struggle as well, and maybe you do. And there's strength in recognizing that and sharing that and admitting that. So I don't think there's anything, I don't think there's any point in concealing that struggle, even if it, I mean, I'm afraid to admit that because, of course, that's admitting a type of weakness. And as adults, we're not supposed to ever, you know, display any type of weakness. And, so, and there's internalized sexism for men, and men, women, everyone, there are different types of weakness that we're not supposed to express, and to simply to say that you're going through a hard time or that you're struggling or that you need some assistance, we're discouraged from doing that socially and psychologically, and there are good reasons for that. But that doesn't change the reality. that is the reality. That is my reality and the reality of many people. So, um, yeah. And so these live sessions here are a way of trying to just share our truth with each other, sharing our truth through sound. And hopefully, as we develop our listening skills, that we're also developing our musical skills, our skills. And now, the point of these electronic pieces is that they're described of, I describe them as a type of a continuo, and that's a technical term. So, like, what is a continuo? I maybe should do an explanatory, maybe I'll do a YouTube series on the lingo that I use. But for those of you who have listened to Baroque music, in Baroque music, a continuo is the background harmony and rhythm, which is parallel to jazz music, the idea of the rhythm section. So whether a continuo in context of classical music, of Baroque music, music composed between the years like 1600 and 1750, is that there would just be a simple keyboard and bass laying down the basic rhythm and the harmony and the chord progressions, so the harmonic and bass progressions of a piece. And then that was a background. And then the foreground instruments, like the violins or the flutes or whatever else, would then be on top of that, would be, making the attention in terms of melody and stuff like that. But they would all be listening. Like, for example, in the example that I just gave, the violin or the flutes, they would be listening and synchronizing what they're playing with the bass and the harmony that is being played in the keyboard and the bass. And that's what we continue a continuo. And that idea of a continuo is also in jazz and in pop music and in the blues and in everything that comes from the blues. So, for example, when you play blues, there's a bass line, there's a blues bass line, and there's a blues chord progression that's synchronized with the bass line. And then everything on top of that is coordinated with that. So if you're playing in a jazz combo, there can be a rhythm section consisting usually of piano chords, the bass, and drum beat. Like those three instruments are like the classic rhythm section. And then the other instruments, like the sax or the horns, whatever like that, the trumpets, those are improvising on top of that and are coordinated with that. So that's another type of an improvisational continuo. And my idea with these pieces is that they are a new type of continuo, an electronic continuo, a background, so functioning analogously to the bass and the keyboard in Baroque music, or to the bass and the keyboard and the drums in blues and jazz, right? And everything that comes from blues, rhythm and blues, and, hip hop and all that, right? But in these pieces, the sine waves, the sinusoids, the rhythms, the harmonies, that's a background for other instruments. So if you have an instrument or voice, of course, in the blues is voice, not just instruments, and rhythm and blues, hip hop, and likewise in Baroque vocal music. So this should have the same function as a rhythmic section and a rhythm section in jazz and blues, or a continuous instruments in Baroque music. that other layers of sound should connect to that. So if you use the instrument of your voice, sing along with it. In other words, hear the pitches, match the pitches, and whatever feels comfortable in your vocal range, just hum along with it, or mouth open, ah, you know, and try to match the pitches and the rhythms that you hear with your own voice in your own body. And if you're an instrumentalist, if you have an instrument nearby, if there's a keyboard, just reach over and play on the keyboard, or your guitar, your sax, your flute, whatever is that, And I hope that there can be a community of people interested in improvising with this, so that these pieces have 10 layers of sound. So you could have up to, you and 9 other people playing together. You could have a Zoom session, or you could just be in your living room and you could just be playing it on the screen and playing along with that. And it could be the background for a kind of a jam session. So that's very much the intention of these electronic pieces. I mean, in other words, you can just listen to it as a type of a contemplative sonic meditation with headphones and a brainwave binaural entrainment, and that's the word entrainment, entrainment, is a technical term for what happens to our brainwaves when they synchronize with sounds or other visual impulses. And all animals have it. For example, lightning bugs, like fireflies, when they flash together in sequence. That's an example of entrainment. Or if you see like your pet, a cat, a dog, or a pet bird moving its body in time to music, that is an example of entrainment. Not just pets, wild animals. It's throughout on every level of the and every species that has a functioning neurological system. So entrainment is inherent in all life forms that have neurological systems, and it's just the way neurons work is a way of entrainment. All right, and so we've inherited that from other lower life forms, and we've also evolved new types of entrainment that are specific to us as human beings, which is our ability to recognize pitches, rhythms, melodies, harmonies, everything that goes into listening into music, which is sort of a higher level cognitive ability that we as humans have, And then also because as humans we uniquely have a level of metacognition. And again, this is but when we say metacognition as human beings, what do we mean? We mean that we have the ability to have cognition about our cognition. We're able to, so our perceptions, we're able to think about our perceptions, we're able to think about our emotions, we're able to think about our impulses, our libidinal impulses. We're able to think about our biological breathing functions. We're able to think about all of these things, emotions and reasoning functions, breathing, all of this, and this is also what happens when we listen to music. We're able to not just experience the rhythms and melodies, we're able to then process that, think about it, and we're able to have emotional experiences and also rational analytical experiences of sound. So music is something that we can appreciate on so many levels, on deep levels as human beings, because we not only have the ability to hear, but we have the ability to reflect upon what we hear. We're able to remember what we hear. We're able to project into the future what we're hearing. So while we're listening to sound, we're able to compare it to what's come before, and we're able to make predictions based upon that and where we think it's likely to go. And that whole experience of comparing a present experience of sound with a past experience of sound, and imagining, making educated guesses as to where the sound is going to go next. This is the adventure of listening, and it's just an incredibly powerful part of being human. That's not for everyone. Not everyone is willing to stay focused on, say, a whole movement of a Beethoven symphony, and some people lack the ability. But for those of us who do have that ability, and it's not like it's not snobby, or anything like that, it really is life-giving. And the ability to just stay focused on sound, to compare present sound to past sound, to then compare the present sound to where we think it's going, is a thrilling experience. And it's very emotional, it's very personal, it's very intimate, it's very sexual, it's conscious, it's subconscious, it's super conscious, it's all of those things at once. Oops. And I guess we're going to continue a little bit. Let me check in with my content moderator. Luca, how's it going? Hello, Eli. Hello, Eli. Just let me just say hi. Yeah. Hi, Eli. Welcome. And so, if you or Greg or Blake, if anyone has any questions, about what we're up to or what we're trying to. Hi, Theo. Hi, Theo. Welcome. I realize this, may initially seem out of left field or weird, or but I assure you, really, it's not a troll. This is what I do, and this is how I express my emotions and my feelings through music. They're just not the ones that you have in regular pop music or movie soundtracks. It's not designed to trigger a familiar response, but rather, so it's not, as I said, it's not about memory. It's not about the past. It's about the present, about staying present with sound. Yeah. And welcome, Traps Faded. Welcome. And yeah, I'm checking the comments column, see if there are any questions. And I'd like to remind everyone that viewers must be 18 or older to recharge and send gifts, and the community guidelines, of course, no inappropriate content, no non-safe for work, and all of that, and nothing political. Yeah. And even though we live in politically charged times, that's not the purpose of these online conversations. The purpose of these online conversations is to listen to sound together and to stay focused and to use it as a springboard for personal growth, wellness, and our expanding our ability to stay present. Yeah. So, yes, you may have questions for me personally, and that's fine as long as it's not, you know, too intimate or personal. I'll try to answer things as fully as I possibly can, you know, about maybe, you know, my artistic journey or just about how any of these works were created. I apologize if my voice is a little scratchy. I seem to be experiencing a slightly allergic symptoms today, a little bit of seasonal congestion. So I do apologize if that's affecting the quality of my speaking voice. Yeah. And we're also, you know, this is a brand new thing. I've only done this once before, so I'm still with my collaborator trying to work out technical issues. You know, I don't have a production team. This is just me, so it's just, you know, trying to figure. Oh, okay. And yeah. See, I'm not sure which password this is. Okay. Hold on. Entering passwords. Okay, that did work. Okay. And so yeah. And Skip. Hi, Skip. Welcome, Skip. And you know, I'm a real person, you're a real person, so we can all say hello to each other. And yeah, this is me. This is not you know, an algorithm, and nothing is actually algorithmic here, you know. In other words, this music that you hear, it was all made by hand, and you know, each of the 10 sort of electronic instruments that I use for each composition are chosen, you know, sort of handmade, you know, personally, and for better or for worse, it's all coming from me. I'm like choosing sounds that have a specific, like, kind of like emotional or psychic quality, you know, for me, and that's always changing. So each piece is different. Each piece has a different vibe, has a different harmony, has a different rhythm, has a different arc, has a different emotional quality, has a different like type of expression. You know. And but you know, I like you. I mean, probably. I just, you know, I grew up listening to just pop music and, you know, hip hop and stuff. And we expect music to have words and um, predictable rhythms, and so we're used to, you know, rhythms that are 1, 2, 3, 4, that are very, you know, basic, simple rhythms. We're used to rhythms that are very metronomic, and which are multiples of 2 and sometimes 3, you know, almost always just 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Even if we hear threes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's like fancy already, you know. And then 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wow, that's like out there, that's weird. But the rhythms that I'm exploring are include those, but are go beyond those into rhythmic groupings of 7, 11, 13, 19, going quite a ways beyond that. And so that is can be outside of our comfort zone, just in terms of the rhythm and the fact that there's no words. I mean, I'm speaking right now, but these are instrumental pieces. Just listening to instrumental music is really hard for a lot of people, you know, whether that is jazz or light jazz or ambient, you know. A lot of instrumental music is meant to be multitasked to. A lot of instrumental music is meant to be elevator music, background music, you know, soundtrack music in movies, you know, and or just, music that we hear in the background while we're shopping or doing something else. And most of us did not grow up with foreground music, instrumental foreground music. The idea that you would just like sit and listen to music that doesn't have words or images, but that's just sound. And that's a heavy lift. I mean, it's heavy for me. It's heavy for you. It's hard for everyone. Uh, but it's very rewarding. It's like no pain, no gain. The more you develop your abstract instrumental listening skills, the more you can actually train yourself to stay present and focused on music which doesn't trigger you into like I said, into memory or projection, or which doesn't, move you into a different type of physical movement. Like that's not for dancing, or that's not for singing along. Well, not words. That's not about the words, but about the sounds, just the sounds. Then this is really a very special skill set, which is really worth being cultivated. And even when I go to concerts, like I like to go to classical music concerts, like at places like Carnegie Hall. Even when I'm in a classical concert, the audience, they are usually well behaved. They're sitting there silently, which is nice, you know. But I really ask myself, how many people are really focused on the music? I mean, even if people are sitting there and, heads up and silently, are they really staying focused on the present unfolding sound? Or are they just kind of just sort of spacing out and politely daydreaming and thinking about other things, Because that's not music when you're spacing out. Music is when you are focused in the present moment and you're sticking with the sound, where the sound and the unfolding of the succession of the sounds is interesting enough that you can just stay focused on that, where you don't need anything else, where you don't need words, where you don't need dance beat, you don't need images, you don't need familiar sort of signposts of telling you what to feel, like a movie soundtrack, right? Uh, and where you don't need imitations of sounds from the street, like street noise, or animals barking, or or anything like that, where you can just listen to sounds in an unfolding way in the present moment, and be truthful to yourself in the present. Yes. And it looks like I have to enter a password here. And I just have to check in with my my partner, if that's working. Is that working? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I need to check. I need to check in with people. Hi, Toro the kid. Hold on. I need to. Sorry. I need to get into my. Uh, Here we go. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hello, Toro the kid. Hello, Toro. And so yeah, you may be wondering, it is what we are looking at or what we're listening to. These are electronic compositions by me, uh, Greg Muna, aka Master Moo, accompanied by very simple oscilloscope generated images, which have a one-to-one correspondence, which show exactly the frequencies and the rhythms. And hold on. I'm also trying to do a little technical installation. And so what you see on the screen is just a very simple, completely literal representation of the frequencies, the rhythms, the envelopes, the sound waves in the simplest possible form of these moving lines, and with a little bit of color added just for aesthetic interest. Um, I can't say that there's anything specific about the color frequencies. I've done other pieces where the colors were synchronized with specific pitches. If you go on my YouTube channel, you'll find other videos where I've composed pieces where, for example, the 12 colors of a color spectrum are related to like the 12 notes on the keyboard, and where you can, and that's also designed as a type of entrainment, right? We were talking about the value of entrainment, entrainment, which is the phenomenon of the synchronization of our brain waves to sensory phenomena such as hearing, sound input, or visual images. And because this is, our sense perceptions are our interface between our brain and the outside world. Obviously, our brains are extremely sensitive to that, and our brains operate on specific frequencies, regularly recurrent patterns, which correspond to rhythms, and also which correspond to musical frequencies. Yeah. So the musical frequencies and rhythms that we hear, if we're able to minimize sort of distortion and noise, and we're able to stay in a very focused, concentrated environment, for example, with headphones like we are right now, we can actually synchronize our inner neurological brainwave frequencies with our outer experiences of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And I'm not working with touch. I'm not a massage therapist. I'm not working with taste. I'm not a master chef. I'm not working with fragrance. I'm not a parfumier, but I do work. I am a artisan of sound. I would say I'm a sound artisan, and secondarily, I try to create visual images that coordinate, that reinforce the entrainment of sound with visual images. So, so in case you were wondering, some people were asking, are the videos separate from the audio? And the answer is no, they're completely connected. The images that you see on every sort of millisecond level correspond to exactly the audio. The audio output generates the visual output, not the other way around. So so in Italian, there's an expression, prima la musica, first the music, dopo le parole, then the words, right? Well, in this case, prima la musica, first the music and then the image. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly how to say that in Italian. Dopo l'immagine. And that's how this works. The visual element is designed to reinforce the patterns which are been chosen in the audio. Yeah. And let's see who else is logging in, and if there are any other like questions or comments. And okay. Hi, hello Paxson. Sorry, I'm I'm not technically that advanced here. So, hello, hello, Paxson. Any questions from Paxson, or from Skip, or Theo, or Eli, or Greg? Hello, hello, hello. And like, for example, let me know. I'm. This is just sort of troubleshooting because I've never really done this before. So, can you hear my voice? Is the voice clear? Can you hear the audio? Is the is the level, is the balance level good for you? In other words, right now, how's your experience? Are you having an overall valuable or positive experience of the interaction, our interaction with question and answers, with me speaking with a backdrop of one of my many music composition videos. Yeah. And if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see that I've created 100 short compositions that are based upon the same principle of taking 10 groups. There are 100 different pieces, but each is based upon the idea of taking 10 frequencies, 10 pitches, and then expressing them rhythmically and phrase-wise as a kind of as a music composition that has melody, harmony, rhythm, and counterpoint in three sections. And why did I do that? I said I chose 10 elements to keep it simple, to keep it focused, to keep it consistent, and then I created 100 permutations of that, 100 different musical settings to give different angles on that, and I structured that as a 100-day course. And the idea would be that you would like start with the first one, which is number one, oscilloscope one, which would be the lowest pitches, and then gradually work up the higher pitches. And the idea being that by learning to identify the lower pitch harmonies and rhythms, that you would be able to train yourself to work with the more complex, because as you said, as we're going up, it was going further and further into the prime number series. Yeah. And as we get further and further away from the lowest primes, from 2 and 3 and 5, the more difficult it is for us to hear what's going on. So you have to start with the simple ones and then move up from there. Yeah. And it forms one big cycle. And so the idea of it as a 100-day course, that over just over a 3-month period, 3.5 months, that you would go through the entire sequence.